Kat's asked us to both present for 15 minutes and then to actually have a chat together about various aspects of our processes, which are, we think, fairly similar but coming from slightly different angles. So, and as you can see from the information you've got, both Kit and I are working with technologies but also with performance and dance and theatre. So it's really very much, this presentation is very much about the people and the technology side. So my name's Ghislaine, and I'm based in London, working in a design collective called BodyDataSpace. And our focus is on that integration of the human body into technologies and new environments. And those environments could be architectural environments, they could be staged environments, they could be virtual environments. It's a very wide briefing on the word environment. So, and our key concern is that shifting relationship between the artist and the content that we're making, and the audience itself. So we're often looking at the creative user or the participator within projects. So this is the area, these are our kind of key words for the group work that we're working with, and as you can see, the majority of those words are very linkable now to new technologies of today, but in fact they're there because they also link to the body and to the human movement, to verbs and to things which actually link to us as living human beings. So we're very much exploring and researching how we get to a more haptic, tactile interfaces, how we get to more virtual and physical environments where we're working with both at the same time or alongside each other, and how we actually hold on to the sense of being alive as such within these situations. So I'm going to quickly just flick through about 10 slides which just show some of the artwork we're doing, but actually move on quite fast into the more theory about the group process, which is what Kat's asked me to talk about. So just to show you, in terms of the body relating to technologies, we're often testing out motion capture, rarely working with gypsy suits or anything on the body, but we do quite a lot of beta testing for those as they come through with their new softwares, etc. But we tend to try not to work with restrictive body suits or wires of any type. And the motion capture side, it's more often working with small webcams or cameras, which actually mean we haven't got to put anything on the body at all. So motion graphics coming through. A lot of work of filming the body, filming interaction with the body and reprojecting that back onto the body. These are large-scale stage pieces that have been done in a variety of different things. A project called Skin, Touch, Feel, working all the time looking at skin, touch and feel within digital interfaces. This is a large-scale sphere that we take out on tour quite a lot. This is at the Tate recently, the Tate Britain. And this again is looking at the touch-feel aspects of how do we actually get that back into the mediated image, and how we relate the reflection of our body to it when we're watching that type of imagery. So, and this is telematics work, which is one of my key areas. I'm supported by Middlesex University in this area of the virtual physical body. Virtual touch and telepresence and teleintuition is what I'm looking at in those areas. So what I'm going to talk about in more theory terms is a process that we've come to as a group called the weave. And this is by no means, I'm going to really emphasise this, the only, oh, it's on a timer, how terrible.
I'll keep tapping it out.
The only group this is not the only way to do this, yeah. We're aware that there's many people now today working with the phrases multidisciplinary, collaborative, co-authored, co-created. In fact, we stick to the words interdisciplinary and inter-authored, and I'm going to talk mainly about inter-authorship today and a methodology that I've been working since the early 90s, which has become a fairly fixed, but I think a very commonsensical group process methodology. But I really want to emphasise it isn't the only way. It's just a way that we found works for our project. So we're a very interdisciplinary group, just to emphasise that. We've got architects, software engineers, dancers, sound artists, visual artists, video, etc. So the interdisciplinary bit is automatically in place. We all come with different skill sets to it. So the basis of this methodology is in the whole thing of using dynamic networking, and using that not just within people patterns, but within the process of creation and the patterns of creation as they come through the making of a work. So we're looking at interconnectedness between people, between tools, and between the behaviour that happens around it. And one of the things that we're very aware of in that is that if you are using dynamic networking, those networks are deeply dependent on the other people within it, and you have to go into it as a highly independent choice. You're saying, I am going into this process and I choose to be within a process with others. And actually it is very much an identity clarity of your particular identity within that group, which allows you to bring as an individual to that group the right things into an effective group process. That's now going dull, isn't it? So we tend to not talk about one type of identity. There's many different identities in different groups, but actually we start with a metaphor which we use, which is called the weave. And this metaphor is basically about plaiting. It's about the whole act of actually taking strands of investigation and strands of a variety, and I'll come on to that, the different ways that we work with it, but actually how, if you're working with different processes and different people, different tools, etc., when you're making a piece of work to go on stage, to go into an environment, those strands need to move at the same rate. And when you're making a plait with your hair, for example, and we all know this, actually unless you actually move it perfectly together, the three different strands, you're going to have something that falls apart, and it's going to show that one strand has gone ahead faster than the others and another strand is behind. So we basically base it on the fact that if we can get the plait to work in a very good way, when you've made a good plait, you've got a strong plait which actually is a pure unity which comes together, and I think that shows very strongly in work. The weave that we're working with in this is between the people, ourselves, our bodies and minds, the technologies and the tools which actually we see as virtually reflecting ourselves, yeah, and the actual group process and the content that we're playing with. So that's the weave that I've got three things as a process director of this type of group process, and I've done about 80 projects with this methodology, where my job is to make sure that the people, the technologies and the content is actually moving together at this very same rate through to make a strong unity throughout the whole. And I think Kit will refer to this as well in his presentation, of some of the, using a piece that he's been working on. So going on to group process and interauthorship, as you can see, I've got a big belief in the value of collective creation processes. I actually have a theory now I'm 45, that perhaps I did this because I possibly would have been a total dictator if I hadn't made myself be involved in totally group collective processes. But it's one of my theories that I have. From having been a very bossy little girl, that maybe this was the only way for me to actually avoid being a complete dictator. But now, having taken about 800 artists through these in a variety of projects internationally and in the UK, and some people find it very hard, but most people gain a lot, even if they don't use this process onwards from the experience. So